Members, take your seats. Members, take your seats, please. The House will come to order. The House will come to order. The chair recognizes a member from Auburn, Representative Osborne, who moves that the House adjourn from the session of June 29, 2023. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the House is adjourned. The House will attend to a prayer by House Chaplain Reverend Bob Stewart, pastor of St. Paul's United Methodist Church in Manchester.
Good morning, God. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, House of Representatives. Let us be in a spirit of prayer. The psalmist wrote in Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." We live in a noisy world, a world filled with distractions, frustrations, and complications. But if we allow the distractions of a world on occasion, so that we can be in a faithful relationship with you, O God. We live in a violent world where there is hatred and war amongst countries. God, help us all to be still so we can feel your love and your peace in our lives. God, be with all the people that have been affected by war. Be with the people of Israel, the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine, the people of Ukraine, the people of Russia, and be with us as well. We are all children of God. Help us to be mindful of that, and when we do, we find and experience your peace. We need to be still and turn to you, O God. God, I ask you to bring a blessing to this New Hampshire House of Representatives today as they revisit previous legislation and complete their final work today. Bless each of these hardworking representatives as they work so diligently throughout the year to do their best for those they represent. We pray all this to your glory, O God, that through your grace we will receive the gifts of your vision, your listening ear, your wisdom, and your guiding hand of leadership we need to do the business presented before us today. In gratitude we pray and praise your holy name. Amen.
The chair recognizes a member from Mason, Representative John Lewicki, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The chair now recognizes Brook Mills of Bedford, who will sing our national anthem.
Oh, see, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the
The House will attend to requests for leaves of absence.
Mr. Speaker, the day, illness, Representatives Boros, Filio, Macbeth, Muse, Alessandra Murray, Renzullo. The day, important business, Representatives Brouillard, Connor, Cordelli, William Dolan, Levitt, Lundgren, Moffett, Newton, Nodder, Palmer, Sanborn, Seidel, Juliette Smith, Verville, Vincent, and Wallace. The day, illness in the family, Representatives Hold and Pennick.
These leaves of absence shall be granted unless otherwise ordered by the House. The House will attend to the introduction of guests.
Mr. Speaker, please welcome Stephanie and Frederick Ryan and Patricia Folsey, parents and grandmother of the singer, guest of Representative Lundgren. Richard Weichert, guest of Representative Selig. Paige Boschman and Kathleen Fountain, guests of Representative Tulersky. Jim Raven, guest of Representative Elberger. And fourth grade students from East Derry Memorial, guests of Representative Steve Pearson. They are with us in the gallery today.
Welcome to the New Hampshire House. The House will now attend to a resolution.
Mr. Speaker, House Resolution 18. Whereas the New Hampshire House of Representatives learned with great sorrow of the attack against Israel on October 7, 2023 by the terrorist organization Hamas. And whereas American citizens were among the over 1,000 casualties of or hostages taken during that attack. And whereas a long-term plan for peace was being negotiated by many states in the region that would avert situations like this attack, and its future now remains in serious doubt. And whereas because of this attack, further civilian casualties among Israelis and Palestinians have increased. And whereas the New Hampshire House has a long-standing history of affirming its support for communities, states, and nations throughout the world, especially in times of distress. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the New Hampshire House of Representatives honors the victims and hostages of the Hamas attack and offers its condolences to the loved ones and families of the victims. And be it further resolved that the House of Representatives in regular session convened stands against terrorism, supports humanitarian aid for those civilians caught amid conflict, and hopes for a lasting peace in the region, offered by the House of Representatives.
Would everybody please rise for a moment of silence for what happened overseas and for what happened in Maine last night that is completely despicable. The House will now attend to communications.
Mr. Speaker, communication dated July 5th, 2023. Dear Mr. Clerk, owing to the continuing failure to provide a remote option or indeed any option so as to permit the continued performance of my legislative duties and the fact that ongoing litigation has to date not provided any indication of when or if any relief might be forthcoming, I cannot allow my constituents to continue indefinitely with fewer than 3 representatives. Accordingly, I hereby resign the office of representative to the General Court effective immediately. Permit me to take this opportunity to thank all members of the legislative staff for their many kindnesses to me over many years, and to further express thanks and best wishes to my colleagues in the continuance of their important work and to my constituents for the decades of confidence they reposed in me. Yours faithfully, David E. Cody. A letter dated September 6, 2023. Dear Paul, please be advised that the following representative-elect is sworn into office by the Governor and Executive Council on this day for Grafton County District 16, David Frock of Enfield. Sincerely, David M. Scanlon, Secretary of State.
Welcome to the New Hampshire House. Further communications.
Mr. Speaker, a letter dated September 18, 2023. Dear Speaker Packard, I am moving out of my residence in Coos District 6, and with deep regret I write to submit my resignation from the House of Representatives. It has been a great honor and privilege to represent the people of Gorham and surrounding communities for the past 17 years. I wish all of my House colleagues the best as you continue your work serving the people of New Hampshire. Bill Hatch, Coos County District 6. Communication dated September 19, 2023. Dear Speaker Packard, I write today to submit my resignation from the House effective immediately. Serving Lancaster and surrounding communities in Coos County and the legislature has been an honor. To my colleagues in the House, it has been an honor working with you to help make New Hampshire a better place. Respectfully submitted, Troy Murner, Coos District 1. And a letter dated October 4th, 2023. Dear Paul, please be advised that the following representative-elect was sworn into office by the Governor and Council on this day: Rockingham County District 1, Harold Rafter of Nottingham. Sincerely, David M. Scanlon, Secretary of State.
Welcome to the New Hampshire House. The House will attend to the Governor's veto message on House Bill 35, requiring student identification cards to include the National Eating Disorders Hotline. The question before the House is, notwithstanding the Governor's veto, shall House Bill 35 become law? The state constitution requires a roll call. 2/3 vote is required to override a veto. Members, take your seats. This will be a roll call vote, as are all of them. The House will come to order. If you're in favor of having the bill become law, you will press the green button. If you are opposed and wish to sustain the Governor's veto, you will press the red button. Voting stations are open for Has everybody made sure your voting station is on? Okay. If you're in favor of having the bill become law, you will press the green button. If you're opposed and wish to sustain the Governor's veto, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds. Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? House will attend the state of the vote. The governor's veto is sustained. House will be in order. The House will attend to the governor's veto message on House Bill 142 relative to the operation of the Burgess Bio Plant. The question before the House is notwithstanding the governor's veto. Shall House Bill 142 become law? Chair recognizes Representative Knoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come before you today to oppose the veto of HB 142 relative to the operation of the Burgess Biopower. Burgess Biopower has been operating in my hometown since 2013 and has been a terrific corporate citizen of Berlin. It is New Hampshire's only remaining biomass plant providing renewable baseload power to Eversource under a 20-year power purchase agreement. Should this veto stand, the plant will close. Hundreds of people could lose their jobs, and New Hampshire's forest products industry will be dealt a severe blow in what will then be known as an unforced error on the part of this legislature. To read the governor's veto message, you would think we were dealing with a business that no one would miss, one that was poorly run, one that cost us more than it was worth. Knowing the plant as I do, I still cannot understand the impetus for this wrong-headed thinking. It could not be further from the truth. The governor says New Hampshire ratepayers have been taken for over $200 million in subsidies for the Burgess biomass plant. The fact is that Burgess Biopower's power purchase agreement with Eversource specifies what each megawatt hour of power is worth, and that is all they have received in their 10 years under this agreement. The New Hampshire Department of Energy completed an audit of Burgess last year after we passed SB 271, in which they confirmed that no money beyond what is allowed in the power purchase agreement was paid to Burgess by ratepayers. Note, however, that biomass is a renewable energy source, so Burgess is eligible for renewable energy credits, which are turned over to Eversource per New Hampshire law. And renewable energy credits do not count as subsidies. The governor goes on to say the power purchase agreement is an example of what can go wrong when government is exploited by opportunists in the private sector. The governor is asking us to blame an award-winning, state-of-the-art power plant who came to us for help, and which both the House and Senate agreed that such help was appropriate, indeed necessary. In this case, the problem with the power purchase agreement came from the New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission, not the private sector. New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission imposed a condition on the deal that forced Burgess to carry the difference between any lower price in the day-ahead energy market and the agreed-upon contract price in the power purchase agreement as an obligation on the company's books. This imposition of a paper debt burden to the plant's cost structure changed the deal markedly. This paper debt is not an operating cost of the plant, but a calculation that is carried on the books but with an obligation to pay if the amount exceeds a fixed cap. HB 142, as written and approved by us this spring, excuses the accrued excess amount, the paper debt that Burgess Biopower will shortly be obliged to pay. The governor goes on to blame Burgess Biopower for taking too long to find a long-term solution. But the long time that's elapsed has been mostly on us. Burgess first came to us in 2017 when we passed SB 577. Burgess could see that the accumulating obligation on their books was a compounding problem that they could not fix it without renegotiating the contract or obtaining a waiver of the power purchase agreement from lawmakers to eliminate the paper debt. There is no truth to any rumor that the debt is a result of how the plant is run or that it has not operated to its fullest capability. To date, Eversource has not been willing to come back to the table to negotiate any change of the power purchase agreement. Whether Burgess continues in operation with all of the benefits of locally sourced, renewable electric power and the jobs that it brings to the New Hampshire economy now falls to us here today to decide. In 2018, we suspended the paper debt for 3 years to provide time to find a way forward, and we should have provided relief from the accumulating obligation then, but we did not. So in 2021, we passed SB 271 to forgive the accumulated paper debt altogether, but a House amendment modified that bill and delayed forgiveness again until the New Hampshire Department of Energy can complete an audit of Burgess's books. The results of the audit were received in December 2022, and they concluded that the plant's finances were in fact as presented by Burgess and that the plant has been operated to the highest professional industry standards. With these results in hand, HB 142 was filed to finally give the plant the solution it had originally sought. We voted 269 to 109 in favor of that relief this past spring, and the Senate vote that followed was unanimous, declaring that passing this bill was the right thing for New Hampshire. Then came the veto, which brings us to where we are today. I'll cut my remarks short here to allow my fellow representative from Berlin to carry on. But let me make one more comment before I step away from the well. Burgess Biopower is good for the economy. Burgess Biopower is good for Berlin and the North Country, and Burgess Biopower is good for New Hampshire. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Edmund Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my colleague alluded to, in the governor's veto message, he blames Burgess Biopower for taking too long to find a long-term solution. But finding a solution has always been the responsibility of this legislature. The reason it may seem that we have been asked to vote on this so many times is because we, the legislature, have continued to kick the can down the road. Each time we have voted for a suspension, it has delayed repayment but not accrual of the CRF. Last year, when this legislature voted to suspend the repayment for a 5th year, we did so with the understanding that it would give the Department of Energy time to complete a full financial audit of this facility. The agreement was that once we had that audit in hand, we would return with that long-term solution. The audit, which was exhaustive, confirmed that the biomass plant is one of the best in the country, and now we are back to give the governor the long-term solution he has been asking for. As this bill was so expertly amended by the chair of the House Science, Technology, and Energy Committee, it only resets the clock. It returns us to that $100 million cap on the CRF and puts the responsibility squarely on Burgess for any future accruals. Today we vote on whether Burgess will continue to operate November 1st, when the current suspension expires. A lot has been made about the benefit of the plant to the forest products industry, but the benefits extend to every corner of this state. The mom and pop gas stations who provide fuel and food to the 100+ truckers who deliver chips to the plant every day. The family farms in all 10 counties of this state who receive low-priced fertilizer made from the nutrient-rich fly ash that comes exclusively from this plant. The machinists, the electricians, the pipe fitters, none of whom are directly employed by Burgess, but can rely on the plant for regular business. Let there be no mistake. If we do not vote to override the veto today, the result will be devastating for all of Coos County and others across this entire state. Please join me in voting yea to overturn this veto. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is kind of like deja vu all over again. Here we are back again with the third in a never-ending series of bailout bills for the Burgess biomass plant. No one's going to stand here and say it's not a well-run, efficient plant, a well-run plant. It's not very efficient because the thermal efficiency of the plant is about 18%, less than half of an oil or coal or nuclear plant, less than a third of a combined cycle gas plant. It just is not an efficient way to make electricity. But let's go back in history just a little bit to see what happened and how we got here. The plant was proposed back in the 2010-2012 region, and it had to go in front of the Site Evaluation Committee to get a permit. I was on that committee at the time. Now, one of the things, obviously, a plant like this has to do is raise capital. Now, because of the federal laws and under the Biden administration, Burgess was able to get their production tax credits paid up front. They were able to roll those up and get paid in advance and use it towards capital costs. And they also were eligible for what's called a new market tax credit. These amounted to tens of millions of dollars from the taxpayers that went to Burgess in the form of those breaks. But that still was not enough because these plants are very expensive to build. So they had to get a purchase power agreement. Without that, they could not get the capital to build their plant. They actively pursued the purchase power agreement with Eversource, and they came to an agreement with Eversource. This agreement went to the PUC. The PUC then modified it to put in what I refer to as a safety valve. Basically, it said, we can pay you the terms of the contract, but if the amount being paid continues to go over market rate, to the point where it comes over $100 million that the ratepayers subsidize Burgess for, then Burgess will have to start paying back the money. That's simply where we're at. We've passed 2 bailout bills in the past to put that off. We keep delaying it, like they said, kick the can down the road, and now they want to change the contract completely. It's simple. Live up to the contract that you signed. No one forced them to sign the contract. If you sign a contract for buying a house because you think the value of the house is going to go up over a period of time, you take out a loan, and the value doesn't go up, you just can't go back to the bank and say, well, I'm only able to make half my mortgage payments because the house didn't go up in value like I expected it was. And that's what they're trying to do here. Another misrepresentation that's often given is somehow this is so important to the electric grid in New Hampshire. Burgess accounts for about 0.2% of the capacity in New England. That's 0.2%. It's about 75 megawatts. To put that in perspective with what's going on in the region, next spring, ISO New England is going to allow 1,400 megawatts at the Mystic facility to go out permanently. They're going to go away permanently. It's 1,400 megawatts versus 75. So you look around and say, who's supporting this and who isn't? Well, I can tell you the Business Industry Association is opposed to it. The environmental groups, I believe the Sierra Club is one of them, is not supporting it. Don Crease, the consumer advocate of the state of New Hampshire, is not supporting it. They all want the veto to be upheld. So let's just look at what's going on right now. Right now, assuming that the Burgess Bio plan is running, they're going to get paid ratepayer subsidies of about $4,000 an hour as we sit here. So just put that up. If we're here for a couple of hours, that's $8,000 in 2 hours. That's because the way the contract works. Eversource is required to pay them in the range of $90 a megawatt hour for every megawatt they produce. And then Eversource immediately sells that power into the daily markets. But the daily market price right now is about $30. So the difference is made up by that ratepayer subsidy. When the cap that was in the contract that they agreed to and signed was reached, which was the $100 million, they were supposed to start paying that back, and now they want to say, no, we want to forgive them that. We don't want to have to pay it back, but we'll go back to the terms of the contract once you wipe out our debt, and it'll continue to build up. But you know what's going to happen? Next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, they'll be right back here again because they're still not going to be able to pay it back because they're still going to be getting massive subsidies, and we're just running up the bill again. This does nothing but delay the inevitable. This plant may be well run and everything else, but it's just not an efficient way to make electricity, and they're going to continue to run up that bill, and the ratepayers are going to be responsible. So nothing's going to change here. All we're doing is saying, live up to the terms of the contract that you aggressively pursued and signed. And another little fact that I think most people don't realize is that this is only Eversource customers that are paying the subsidy. If this plant is so wonderful and so important to the state, then maybe we should pass a tax, would be a more equitable way, and have everybody in the state pay it. But if you're a Liberty, Unitel, or co-op customer, even if you're a co-op customer who lives in the North Country, who makes their living off of selling products to Berlin Biomass, you don't pay a dime in subsidies. But a retired school teacher living in Manchester on a fixed income pays a higher electric bill to support this. So I guess it comes down to this. Do you think the government should be picking winners and losers and decide which companies will be successful because of subsidies, or do you think people should be free to make the choice of what type of electricity they want to buy? Please vote to uphold the veto.
The chair recognizes Representative Cascaden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have notes so I can give you the facts. The Burgess Biomass Plant has produced power for New Hampshire consistently and reliably to the terms of the purchase power agreement for 10 years now. We're midpoint. During that 10-year period, Burgess has contributed $700 million to New Hampshire's economy. We made the right decision this winter when we overwhelmingly passed the House Bill 142. There's been a lot of misinformation about the management of this plant recently, yet there is no credible evidence that this is anything but a best-in-class management team. Burgess achieves availability and credibility percentages of over 90% when the industry average is 58%. They're a major partner in New Hampshire's forest products industry, and they support good jobs in the industry. Their impact on the North Country economy is huge, and their presence is felt throughout the region and throughout the state. Locally, Burgess pays 16% of Berlin's property taxes, provides 40% of the Berlin Waterworks revenue. It will raise local and county taxes in North Country communities, particularly co-ops, if we let this veto stand. More facts, true facts. Burgess buys 800,000 tons of low-grade wood per year from 154 communities in all 10 counties of New Hampshire. The facility uses 1/3 of all the wood cut in New Hampshire's $1.4 billion of forest products industry, while providing steady, well-paying jobs to 29 plant employees and supporting 240 jobs statewide. So Burgess by itself injects nearly $70 million into New Hampshire's economy each year. The economics of managing our timberlands will be upended if we allow this plant to close. We stand to lose these and many more economic benefits if we allow Burgess to cease operating. To lose our one remaining biomass plant, particularly a plant that is among the top three most efficient and well-run biomass facilities in the country, would be a real failure by this legislature. That failure would be a caving into politics at a time our fellow citizens look to us for help with New Hampshire's economy. In hearings, our constituents have asked us to save New Hampshire's forest economy and also to help continue the city of Berlin's economic recovery from the previous mill shutdown. Overturning this video is the right decision to deliver economic benefits for the North Country and for the entire state. I am a Berlin native. I have a 40-plus career in the entire northern region. I experienced the demise of the pulp and paper industry. My family owned a business that serviced the logging industry. And I've been on the personal and professional downside of the city's declining economy. When the legislature voted overwhelmingly in favor of 142 this spring, we got it right. The reasons this bill passed originally are just as valid now as they were a few months ago. Let's show the people who elected us, our foresters, our landowners, our fellow citizens, that we can do the right thing for New Hampshire and overturn the governor's veto of House Bill 142. Thank you.
The state constitution requires a roll call. A two-thirds vote is required to override a veto. This will be a roll call vote. Members, take your seats. House will be in order. This is a roll call vote. Chair recognizes Representative Summers for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that the Burgess biomass plant to date has already received over $200 million in bailouts, and if I know the HB 142 is, for all intents and purposes, a bailout of upwards of $70 million or more, and if I know that in 2 years a request for another $70 million plus bailout will be made, and if I know $70 million every 2 years is quite expensive for 30 plus employees, and if I know that the states like Massachusetts and Massachusetts' current law and environmental groups no longer view burning biomass as renewable energy, and if I generally believe that just like Wall Street banks, no one is too big or too small to fail, then I would push the red button to concur with the governor's veto. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative McGee for parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that letting this veto stand forces a huge, unjustified tax increase on the people of the North Country and brings job losses and uncertainty, and if I know that this plant receives no other ratepayer money than what appears in the signed contract it entered into 2013, and that renewable energy credits do not count as subsidies because they belong to the energy taker, which in this case is Eversource, not the plant, the producer. And if I know that Burgess Biomass is the last in-state plant buying New Hampshire's essential timber products, and that upending the timberland economics chokes local economies, shrinks our energy independence, and leaves New Hampshire more vulnerable to forest fires. And finally, if I know the North Country is saying enough is enough. They came to us for help, and we gave it to them by a veto-proof vote. and they are still counting on us to see it through their eyes, then would I now press the green button to put an end to this out-of-step veto? Thank you.
This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor of having the bill become law, you will press the green button. If you are opposed and wish to sustain the governor's veto, you will press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Oh, you didn't check in, that's why. Your head is here. You want yes? Representative Wheeler. Juliet Smith, she said she wasn't going to be here. All right, tell her that Juliet Smith and your head are here.
If all members present had an opportunity to vote, House will attend to state of the vote. 194 voting yea, 159 voting nay. It fails to reach the two-thirds. The governor's veto is sustained. For what reason does the member rise?
Move that the remarks from the previous debate be placed in the permanent journal.
Without objection? The House will attend to the governor's veto message on House Bill 337 relative to directing the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification to provide notice of public meetings and an opportunity for comment from the public in creating a new Attorney 2 position. The question before the House is notwithstanding the governor's veto, shall the House Bill 337 become law? Chair recognizes Representative Carol McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Most of you probably don't remember House Bill 337 at all. That's because when it went to ED&A, there was no opposition, some concerns, so we had several subcommittee meetings and amended the bill to fix some of the concerns that were brought to our attention. It passed the House, it passed the committee unanimously, and it passed the House on consent. It went to finance because there's a small cost involved in implementing it. They reviewed it, passed it unanimously in committee, and it passed the House on a 387-0 roll call vote. So House Bill 337 is the House position. In the Senate, the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification brought some additional concerns and worked with the Senate to put in language that settled their concerns. It passed the Senate on a voice vote twice. We concurred with the Senate amendment also on a voice vote without debate. So this is a minor bill, not really very controversial. What it does is it requires notice of meetings for licensing boards and that the information that the board has be shared with the audience. We've all been in various boards or committee meetings where the committee has a piece of paper with an amendment or a schedule or a change, and they're all looking at it and discussing it, And a room full of people are staring at them because that information is not available to them. There's nothing like getting a 35-page amendment, when you walk into the committee room. You're not going to have a chance to review it. So what this bill does is it enforces transparency for licensing boards. The governor did have a very good point that it only applies specifically to licensing boards. There's two reasons for that. The first is that they have a long history of lack of transparency, and the licensed individuals have been complaining to the legislature for at least the 15 years I've been here. I mean, possibly before, I wouldn't be surprised, but there are issues with various boards not sharing information, not announcing their meetings, and not being as transparent as we want the government to be. So that's a good place to start. The other reason to do it is that it's a relatively self-contained group. We can implement these changes at the OPLC, see how they work, and if it does turn out to encourage the best practices that some organizations use, we'd implement it throughout all the boards and committees and other groups in the state. But we'll try it in the licensing boards, give it a fair shake, and then see if we can expand it to everything. So I'm going to vote against the veto, and I hope you will too. Thank you.
The state constitution requires a roll call. 2/3 vote is required to override a veto. This will be a roll call vote. Members, take your seats. This will be a roll call vote. Chair recognizes Representative Merchant for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I believe government transparency is essential to a government of the people, and if I know board meetings are posted by the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification, OPLC, at least 30 days before a board meeting, and if I know a board may hold an emergency meeting at any time, and if I know the board chair has the discretion to alter the board agenda and to make late documents available to the public at the meeting, would I now vote to override the veto of House Bill 337 by pushing the green button?
The state constitution requires a roll call. If you're in favor of having the bill become law, you will press the green button. If you are opposed and wish to sustain the governor's veto, you will press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Burrows.
If all members present had an opportunity to vote, House will attend the state of the vote. 251 voting yea, 104 voting nay. It does receive the necessary two-thirds to override the governor's veto. The House will attend to the governor's veto message on House Bill 342 relative to lead testing in children. The question before the House is, notwithstanding the governor's veto, shall House Bill 342 become law? Chair recognizes Representative Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This was a fairly simple bill. It simply requires, when a child enters daycare or school, for a form to be filled out stating whether they have had lead testing previously. We have a law that requires that. We have exceptions in the current law, but the problem that this bill was intended to address is that compliance has fallen off, and we all know of the potential damages of lead poisoning in young children. So the bill, as it was passed by the House and the Senate, merely provides another time and opportunity for parents to be given information, if they have not had their child tested, about the law and about testing availability. There is no barrier to school entry in the bill. That is all still left to parents. It is just a further opportunity to get this done. So with that, I hope you will join me in observing Lead Poisoning Prevention Week by passing this bill. Thank you.
The state constitution requires a roll call. A two-thirds vote is required to override a veto. This will be a roll call vote. Members, take your seats. This will be a roll call vote. The chair recognizes Representative Leon for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that New Hampshire children are required to have their blood levels tested at the ages of 1 and 2 because it needs to be done early in order to have appropriate medical intervention, and if I know that many children enter child care well before 1 year of age, and that no child enters school at the age of 2 years old. And most importantly, Mr. Speaker, if I know that the recent low lead testing level numbers weren't because parents weren't testing their children by choice, but because they couldn't, because the machines had been recalled, but now that recall has been addressed, would I then press the red button to sustain the governor's veto?
Chair recognizes Representative Weber for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that the bill is passed, prevents no barriers to school entrance or daycare entrance, but merely another opportunity to remind parents of the dangers of lead poisoning and the ability to avail themselves when they may not have during the time that the machines were not available. would I now celebrate Lead Poisoning Prevention Week by pressing the green button? Thank you.
The state constitution requires a roll call. A two-thirds vote is required to override a veto. If you're in favor of having the bill become law, you will press the green button. If you oppose and wish to sustain the governor's veto, you will press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds. All members present had an opportunity to vote. House will attend the state of the vote. 184 voting yea, 171 voting nay. The veto was sustained. Representative Osborne and Wilhelm move the adoption of an amendment to House rules as proposed by the Rules Committee and as printed in the House calendar. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Representative Osborne and Wilhelm move the adoption of floor amendment to House Rule 66. It's in your seat pockets. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. I recognize the clerk for Senate messages.
Mr. Speaker, the Senate has voted to sustain the governor's veto on the following bill: Senate Bill 42, relative to overpayment of unemployment compensation. The Senate has voted to sustain the governor's veto on the following bill: Senate Bill 51, creating a commission to study charitable gaming and historical horse races and relative to the moratorium on licensed historical horse racing facilities. The Senate has voted to sustain the governor's veto on the following bills: Senate Bill 79, relative to the participation of customer generators in net energy metering. The Senate has voted to sustain the governor's veto on the following bills: Senate Bill 193, relative to the obligation of collective bargaining units to negotiate in good faith. And the Senate has voted to sustain the governor's veto of the following bill: Senate Bill 256, establishing a safety program for off-highway recreational vehicles.
The chair recognizes the member from Auburn, Representative Osborne, for a motion to adjourn from the early session. The question is on the motion to adjourn from the early session. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted.
I do have announcements. Yes. Announcements first, and then unanimous consent.
We have a few announcements. Chair recognizes Representative Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, the Special Committee on Child Care met, and we took a very nice unanimous vote. Unfortunately, due to some confusion and its placement in the calendar and being properly noticed, we get to meet again and do the same vote again. So if you are a member of the House Special Committee on Child Care, the moment we are adjourned from this, we will meet in room 206 to do what we did this morning. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A couple of quick announcements. One, please check your mailboxes today and empty them. We have several packages that have been delivered. Also, your black books are in your boxes. Also, there will be a lunch served outside, hosted by the Concord Lions Club after the adjournment of this session. Kiwanis Club, I'm sorry. And they'll be ready in 15 minutes.
This is unanimous consent. Please be attentive. Chair recognizes Representative Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My fellow representatives, I'm Luz Bay. I'm a representative from Dover. You may or may not know that I'm a 3-time breast cancer survivor. And October is a Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And this should be a reminder for us to get our breast cancer screening or to remind our loved ones to get our breast cancer screening. In 1998, when I was 32 years old, I was diagnosed for the first time. I was about to get married. I was moving cross country from Iowa to New Hampshire. I was changing jobs. I was selling my home, buying a new home. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer and get my first treatment within the 6-week period. So I can say that over a 6-week period, I experienced the most stressful things that happen in one's life. Now, I always want to remind people about the breast cancer awareness because early detection is key. And I also want to show myself as an example that one can thrive and live under a cancer cloud. Between my first and second breast cancer diagnosis, I had 2 wonderful children. And between my second and third breast cancer diagnosis, I ran my first marathon. I have now ran 25 marathons. More importantly, it's after my third breast cancer diagnosis that I was elected to this office. Within the last few weeks, my very best friend at work was diagnosed with breast cancer. And on the same week, one of my sisters was diagnosed with breast cancer. But I'm happy for them that they have me. And they're both going through their treatments. They're both in good spirits. But this is just something that when I was first diagnosed, it was all about me. And now that I have learned to live and thrive with it, it's not about me anymore. It's about the rest of us. I have tried to, every opportunity to speak with those that need help and guidance. So if you know someone, I'm available. I have raised over $30,000 for cancer research. But with all of that, it really depends on each and every one of us. And so, to celebrate the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, thank you to those who actually wore pink today. There are still a few more days in October. Wear your pink, as I've been wearing pink for every day of this month. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what reason does the member rise?
Mr. Speaker, I would ask that the remarks on the observance of Breast Cancer Month and their inspirational message be printed in the permanent journal.
Without objection. Chair recognizes Representative Nutter-Upham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today on behalf of the Hillsborough delegation to congratulate Representative Jen Morton on receiving the Spirit of New Hampshire Award for her contributions. The awards were held earlier this week in Concord. Representative Morton has devoted her time to assisting many organizations in her community, including the Nashua Pride, the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter, the Peacock Players, which is a children's theater group, and maybe the biggest one of all, End 68 Hours of Hunger, the organization which collects and distributes food to food insecure students in the greater Nashua area so that they don't go hungry over the weekend. On behalf of the Nashua delegation and those in the greater Nashua area who benefit from the organizations that Jen works with, we extend our deepest thanks and congratulations. Jen, will you stand up? Woo!
Chair recognizes Representative Cushman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for recognizing me. Thank you, fellow legislators. Everyone in this chamber swore an oath to uphold the New Hampshire State Constitution. In Part 1, the people reserve for themselves certain rights that government shall make no laws to violate. All laws repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. We've all heard that. The Supreme Court recently has said that the historical analysis method is to be used to determine the intent of the law or the Constitution. This means that with the usages and customs of the time the law or Constitution was written determines how that law applies today. Part 1, Article 2 of the New Hampshire State Constitution says, the people have a right to give instructions to their representatives. Webster's Dictionary of the American English Language of 1828 defines instruct as to give notice and also to impart knowledge or educate, and also to direct or command to furnish with orders. Article 38 of Part 1 says, quote, the people, they have a right to require of their lawgivers and magistrate an exact and constant observance of the fundamental principles of the Constitution. Article 8 of Part 1 says, all power residing originally in and being derived from the people, all the magistrates and officers of government are their substitutes and agents, and at all times accountable to them. Some have said that, well, being accountable means every 2 years the people have an election and they vote on us and expect us to hold our campaign promises, hold to them. I don't find that concept anywhere in writing in the Constitution or the actual law, and I don't see how that squares with Part 1, Article 8, that says agents are accountable at all times, nor Part 1, Article 38, that says exact and constant. In reality, the people have the right to instruct us as their agents when it comes to protecting their constitutional rights. That's our primary job. They have the right to provide us notice of a violation of their rights that we swore to protect, and to instruct us in remedying those violations, insofar as it's within our authority that they granted to us in the Constitution, in Part 2. They can't tell us to stand on our heads, but they can provide us notice that a state agency is violating rights and is in need of correction. They can instruct us to take action to rectify the situation with the powers that we have been given by them. The people have a right to constant observance of the law by their magistrates, and when constitutional rights are violated, we magistrates have a duty under our oath to assist and make it right. If we ignore pleas for help and continue to let people's rights be violated, if later they do take it to court and it's found their rights were violated, and we knew and did nothing, we were given notice and said, I don't have to do what you say, and didn't give any evidence to that fact. If we can't show that we don't have to, then we become culpable. We violated our oath, and now we're a part of denying the people their rights. We were derelict in our duty, and that is maladministration, and with notice, it can rise to the level of malice. We can be held accountable, and notices have been used in court to prove that a defendant has no plausible deniability. So let's get back to the basics of our true purpose here in this body, the securing of the constitutional inalienable rights of the people. Thank you.
Representative Osborne moves the House stand in recess for the purpose. For what reason does the member rise?
I'd like to request that the previous remarks be put in the permanent journal.
Without objection. For what reason does the member rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the remarks of our colleague from Nashua also be placed in the permanent journal.
Without objection. Representative Osborne moves the House stand in recess for the purpose of receiving messages, after which business is concluded and the House shall stand adjourned from the 2023 session. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The House stand adjourned from the 2023 session.